The World Report on News 6 World. Let's take a look at some of the headlines of this hour. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he hopes U.S. brokered talks in Geneva next week are substantive, but adds Ukraine is too often asked to make concessions. He accuses Moscow of delaying progress by changing its lead negotiator as U.S., Russian, and Ukrainian delegations prepare to meet in Switzerland. The U.S. Justice Department sends lawmakers a legally required letter outlining redaction in files linked to convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The letter lists high-profile names referenced in the records without detailing the context, including individuals who may have had no direct contact with Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell. Britain and European allies say Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny is killed with a poison linked to a dart frog toxin 2 years after his death in a Siberian prison. UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper says only the Russian government has the means and motive, while Moscow dismisses the claim as an information campaign. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen says she believes President Donald Trump still wants to own Greenland, despite recently toning down his threats. Speaking in Munich, she stresses Greenland is not for sale, as security tensions between Copenhagen and Washington continue. Ukrainian opposition figure Reza Pahlavi says U.S. military intervention could save lives and urges President Donald Trump not to spend too long negotiating a nuclear deal with Tehran. The exiled son of Iran's former Shah tells Reuters that he believes the clerical government is nearing collapse and says an attack could accelerate its fall. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is set to begin a 2-day trip to bolster ties with Slovakia and Hungary, whose conservative leaders, often at odds with the other European Union countries, have warm ties with President Donald Trump, while Rubio is to discuss energy cooperation and bilateral issues, including NATO commitments. According to Australian government announcements, Australia will spend $2.76 billion to advance construction of a shipyard to support nuclear-powered submarines under the 2021 AUKUS Defence Pact with the US and Britain. The agreement is Australia's largest ever defence investment. According to Taiwan's Foreign Minister Ling Chia-lung, China is the real threat to regional security and is hypocritically claiming to defend UN principles of peace in response to remarks by Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi at the Munich Security Conference, as Wang Yi warned that some countries are trying to split Taiwan from China. Now we start this hour with Russia and Ukraine. Russian presidential spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has stressed that the importance of remembering the West's role in the 2014 bloody coup in Ukraine, which he said was orchestrated by Western countries, including the US, UK, France, and Germany, has emphasized that these nations directly participated in the violent overthrow of Ukraine's government, which led to significant political upheaval in Eastern Europe. Peskov's comments come amid heightened tensions between Russia and Ukraine, as well as Western powers, with Russia continuing to push its narrative of Western interference in Ukraine's internal affairs. Meanwhile, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Galuzin has said that Russia's retaliatory actions following the Kyiv regime's attack on the residence of Russian President Vladimir Putin in the Novgorod region inflicted serious damage on military facilities in Ukraine. Now we welcome Professor Nohan Gunratna. He's an international affairs expert, joins us live from Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, why is a Russian presidential spokesperson bringing back the West's role, or emphasizing the West's role in the 2014 coup in Ukraine?
Asuma, what happened was that the European countries worked together to build a very strong military presence on the European side of the Russian border. And this happened because there was a change of government in Ukraine. So what the Russians are saying is that there must be a resolution to the NATO and EU buildup of capabilities and forces that threatens Russia, because if there is a presence of heavy military equipment and capabilities, certainly the Russians will feel that they are under siege. So the Russians are constantly reminding that this is a fight between Russia and Europe, Russia and the West. So even if the Ukrainian issue is resolved, it is no resolution to what the Russians are doing at this point in the West, especially in Europe, what you call fighting below the threshold of open war. So what is key is for there to be a comprehensive settlement between Europe and Russia, not just addressing the challenge in Ukraine.
So building on that, why is if this is all about Russia, not all, but partly about Russia and the West, so why are they not? Why is Europe not even in the negotiating table?
Unless Europe is brought to the negotiating table, the bigger conflict between Russia and the West, Russia and Europe will not end. But Trump is thinking rightly of resolving the Ukraine-Russia conflict in the first phase of a very long process of negotiations. And at this point, it has not been possible even to resolve this in a comprehensive way. So I think that the coming talks will really help to address some of these issues, because Russia would have never invaded Ukraine unless it really perceived that there was a big threat to Russia's stability and security. And I think every Western country should take that into consideration, especially the Ukrainian government.
How do you analyze the current trust level between Russia and US and Russia and UK, France and Germany, these countries that the spokesperson of Putin has stated, directly referred to?
The European countries and Russia, the trust has been disrupted. Trump put in trust, and that is why they agreed to meet. And that is why I think that US can play a very important role to resolve the heightening of the conflict between Russia and Europe. At this point, although we are all focused on Ukraine, every day there are cyber attacks by the Russians against European countries. And there are other forms of attacks, such as espionage, that target European countries. So I think that there must be a greater resolution to this dispute between Europe and Russia. And that is why the Russian spokesperson referred to France, to Britain, and to other countries in Europe, because they see that this is a European plot against Russia. The war in Ukraine, they don't only say that this is a affair between Ukraine and Russia. This is a bigger issue that needs to be resolved.
Yes, and last but not least, we saw a lot of statements yesterday from Munich coming in, especially European leaders saying that they need to ramp up, or they need to be prepared for more, in case of more Russia's army attacking them, etc. So how do you think, how prepared are they right now, and how long do you think it would take for them to make up for these lost time, now that they lag behind, in terms of military power, they lag behind Russia, China, and US?
European budget is 1.5 European budget for defense is 1.5 of their GDP, and that is why Trump wants the Europeans to have a budget at least of 5% for defense, because US has been supporting Europe. So Trump wants Europeans to be independent and build capabilities so that US American taxpayers will not be funding the defense of Europe. So I believe that now the Europeans, both Britain and continental Europeans, they have started to ramp up their defense military, what you call the military industrial complex, meaning that Europe will emerge as a very powerful entity in the coming decade, and they will be able to, in many ways, fight the Russian threat.
Thank you very much, Professor, for highlighting that and sharing that insight with us. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now, United Nations Secretary General António Guterres has said that the carnage in Sudan is totally intolerable in the 21st century. Guterres has added that he hopes to continue working with key factors to put effective pressure for an immediate ceasefire. Let's listen into what António Guterres has shared.
In a carnage in Sudan that is totally intolerable in the 21st century. We have been very actively engaged towards the African Union, together with the African Union, with the Arab League, with the Quad, and with other key actors in order to put effective pressure for an immediate ceasefire.
Now we welcome back Professor Rohan Gunratna. He's joining us live from Singapore. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, as we see, war in Sudan continues, and it's not the talks, not mediation efforts between Sudanese RSF forces and also the Sudanese government. It's also lacking behind, and there's the momentum which seemed to have had last year. It seems like it's no longer there. Who needs to put more pressure on this war to end? What can United Nations do more?
The UN Secretary General made that statement that you just aired because 6,000 people were killed in the last 3 days in fighting between the Sudanese military and what you call the Rapid Support Force, the opposing party in Sudan. It is the highest death toll of any battlefield in the ongoing conflicts around the world. And I think the UN Secretary General's statement should be taken seriously. But the UN itself can do very little because they do not have the kind of military capabilities to stop the fighting. UN is an organization where every country participates, but they are not willing to commit the type of capabilities to enforce peace in Sudan. So I think that there are other countries that can do it. I think primarily the African countries should take the lead, because at this point the African leaders can do much more to restore stability in Africa, including in Sudan. If the violence continues in Sudan, it will spread greater instability in Africa as a whole. So I think the UN Secretary General's statement should be considered by every African leader so that they can have an Africa-wide strategy to restore peace and stability.
Yes, 100%. Thank you for sharing that powerful message with us. With that, I'd like to thank Professor Gunratna for sharing that. Thank you very much. We have a breaking news coming in from Iran. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Majid Takht Ravanchi has recently, in an interview, said that Iran is ready to compromise on its nuclear program if the US agrees to lift sanctions. He has emphasized that the US must prove its sincerity in the ongoing talks, with the next round set for Geneva. According to reports, Iran has offered to dilute its enriched uranium but will not discuss its missile program. Takht Ravanchi has also stated that zero enrichment demands are no longer on the table. Now we move on to Australia. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced a 2.76 Australian billion-dollar investment to build a shipyard in Osborne, city of South Australia. This plan is a part of the AUKUS defence pact with the US and UK. Prime Minister Albanese has announced that the shipyard will help in building nuclear-powered submarines, creating almost 10,000 employment opportunities. According to reports, the total cost of the project is expected to around 30 billion Australian dollars over the coming decades. Albanese has highlighted that the project will enhance national security and drive economic growth. Reports suggest that the agreement will also see Virginia-class submarines based in Australia starting in 2027, with a new class of nuclear-powered submarines being developed.
We'll see almost 10,000 jobs created to design and build the yard and to build nuclear-powered submarines in South Australia. Today we're announcing that my government will contribute as a down payment $3.9 billion for this project, making an enormous difference. We know that the estimation is that there'll be $30 billion invested here in Adelaide, in South Australia. Well, we're very confident, and I've sat down with President Trump in person, as you will have seen, and had a number of discussions with the President, but other members of the administration as well. This is in the interests of the United States, in the interests of the UK, and in the interests of Australia. And that is why this is a project that is progressing in accordance with not just the principles, but the plan of action which we are rolling out.
Now we welcome retired Major General Gigi Dividi. He's a war veteran and Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General.
Thank you, Suma. Always a pleasure.
Same here. Now, looking at this, from a strategic point of view, can you tell us how transformative is this nuclear-powered submarines be for Australia's deterrence capability, and also with US commanded submarines set to be based in Australia from 2027, what challenges might arise, or how might this change the region?
Well, Suma, first and foremost, we need to understand as to what's the rationale behind all this. Basically, this is to checkmate the Chinese influence in the Indo-Pacific region. And for the information of the viewers today, China numerically has the largest navy in the world. It has more than 350 naval ships, and they plan to raise these figures to 450. So numerically, the Chinese navy today is the biggest navy in the world, and also backed up with the Coast Guard. It has a very formidable Coast Guard to complement the naval power. So now this transformative strategic initiative is primarily aimed to checkmate the Chinese influence in Indo-Pacific. As you know, the latest national security strategy of US, which have been signed by President Trump, it makes very categorical that the Chinese influence will be checked in the area of interest of the US, and that is especially in the Western Pacific. Now, this AUKUS deal was signed between Australia, United Kingdom and US in 2021. This deal is that there will be nuclear powered submarine but conventionally armed. This needs to be understood that nuclear powered submarine can be armed with nuclear weapons or with conventional weapons. So this deal basically is to give capability to Australia to have nuclear powered submarine but conventionally armed. And there are only 6 countries in the world which have these submarines which are powered by the nuclear reactors. Now this nuclear powered submarine gives them tremendous capability to operate underwater for a very long duration, and that means that they have a tremendous strategic outreach and operational outreach. Now this agreement that has been signed basically is to empower the Australia to have the formidable naval capability. And along with that, you rightly mentioned that America will be selling 3 Virginia class submarines to Australia, and they'll be based in Australia. And as it is, American soldiers, almost 2,500 American soldiers also are based in Australia. So all this goes on to show that the America, UK, Australia, they come together to ensure that they have a joint capability in Indo-Pacific and to checkmate the Chinese influence in this region.
Right.
Asuma.
Thank you for highlighting that. And also, Major General, now with Prime Minister Anthony Albanese describing this, multi-billion-dollar investment as a down payment, given that AUKUS is in itself 368 billion multi-decade commitment, how sustainable is this in terms of political support within Australia? Especially, critics have already emerged saying that there's budget deficits, there's lack of transparency, and now that the West's alignment, or the traditional allies of US, their trust, as yesterday we were talking, their trust to, although interdependent, their trust towards US is deteriorating or shaky. Can Australia maintain this trust and this huge investment in this?
Well, Asuma, you have to always balance out your defense with the economic growth and the economic interest. So this has to be a fine balance. Well, there is always the argument on when the accretion of budget is there, means definitely it has a impingement on the economic side, because after all, the finances are limited. But then Australia has to balance itself as far as defense capability is concerned, especially as I mentioned, that there is a growing threat from China. And imagine, today we are looking at only China, but then China has very strong ties with Russia, and Russia also has a formidable Western fleet. So when these two get combined together, that will be a very major threat to Australia and the other countries like South Korea, Japan, which are all willy-nilly are the allies in the Quad. So the point is that yes, there is a shift in the US policy as far as the providing security resources to Europe and even to Australia, because now the policy of President Trump is that the European nations and Australia and other, even in South Korea, Japan, they must increase the defense budget and also share the greater load of the security challenges. So I think Australia has no choice but to be more self-reliant in its capability, while help is there from America, from UK, but the funding has to be largely by the Australians themselves, while the technology will come from UK and USA, but the funding has to come from the Australians themselves, and that's why this major financial commitment has been made by Prime Minister Albanese, because until you fund the project, it won't move forward. And they have certain timelines that by next 3 to 4 years, these submarines must be operational, and they should add to the capability of the Australian Navy. So I think this has to be balanced out. There's always opposition to the raising of the defense spending, but I think national security overrides these considerations, and therefore I think Prime Minister Albanese is right that these funds have to be made available in case they want to have self-reliance and their own security, especially in the Indo-Pacific, with the kind of challenges that are emerging, especially from China. Asuma.
Right. And last but not least, how will Australian government or Prime Minister Albanese be able to successfully balance this protecting their sovereignty, but also investing into this AUKUS pact in case of future deterrence from China, but like you rightfully mentioned, in case there's more Russia's involvement in the future in the area?
Well, Asuma, every nation has to calculate or evaluate its threat perceptions, and accordingly, you have to earmark funds for your security. But today we are living in the world which is very, very uncertain, and where the security challenges are paramount. And case in point is what is going on in Ukraine. After all, both China and Russia are very aggressive as far as their global designs are concerned. So I think these new developments have to be factored and taken into consideration when Australia evaluates its own threat perception. And I think there has to be consensus among the ruling and the political parties that at the end of the day, if country is not secure, it cannot be prosperous. So that is the defining line, Asuma.
Yes. With that, I'd like to thank Major General G.T. Dwivedi for joining us and sharing that insight. Thank you very much. Now we move on to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is set to begin a 2-day trip to bolster ties with Slovakia and Hungary, whose conservative leaders often are at odds with other European Union countries. They have warm ties with President Donald Trump. However, Rubio will be discussing energy cooperation and bilateral issues, including NATO commitments. Rubio has said that these are countries that are very strong with U.S., very cooperative with the United States. They work closely with U.S., and it's a good opportunity to go see them and to countries he has never been in. Rubio, who is his dual role, also serves as Trump's national security advisor, will meet in Bratislava with Slovak Prime Minister Robert Fico, who visited Trump in Florida last month. Now we move on to India. India is setting the stage for an ambitious artificial intelligence revolution with plans to build a massive new data city that will power the country's digital future. Nara Lokesh, the Information Technology Minister for Andhra Pradesh, has shared insights into the project, emphasizing that AI is now an undeniable force shaping the future. The new city will be located in Visakhapatnam, a coastal city in Andhra Pradesh, and is designed to foster a cutting-edge hub for data, computer, and AI infrastructure. Lokesh has highlighted the broader vision behind the project, which goes beyond just data centers and includes multi-layered developments, aims to create a vibrant ecosystem, positioning the region as a global leader in AI innovation. The project is part of India's broader push to bridge the technological gap with global leaders like the US and China, focusing on creating a robust AI ecosystem that will drive future growth and innovation across various sectors.
See, AI is here. And my point is that every industrial revolution has always created more jobs than it has displaced. But it has created those jobs in countries that have embraced the industrial revolution. So the AI revolution is here, no second thoughts about it. And as a nation, and more so as a state, we have taken a stand that we're going to embrace it. We can create a hub for data compute and AI capacity in the state of Andhra Pradesh. And this is just the beginning. For me, it's not just about the data center. Now, I'm going and chasing the companies that actually make those servers that go sit in those data centers. The companies that make the entire air conditioning, the water cooling system, the whole 9 yards. I believe in building the entire ecosystem that will make Andhra Pradesh more vibrant and positions itself really well in terms of future opportunities in this particular ecosystem. The data city is going to come in one ecosystem. And what do I mean by one ecosystem? It's a 100-kilometer radius. So I'm a firm believer of ecosystems. I don't believe that we should pepper it across the state.
Now we move on to Vietnam. Vietnam has officially granted SpaceX the approval to launch its Starlink satellite internet service in the country. As reported by state media, the Ministry of Science and Technology has issued a license to Starlink's local unit to provide both fixed and mobile internet services using satellites, along with licenses for radio frequencies and equipment. This approval comes just before Vietnam's top leader To Lam is expected to visit the United States next week. SpaceX had previously been allowed to operate Starlink on a trial basis, but the exact launch date remains unclear. The two countries are also in the midst of trade negotiations after the US imposed tariffs on Vietnamese goods last year. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.